We'll go ahead and get started. The chairman will be in just a moment. We'll start with the roofing bill, which is House Bill 301, Representative Weldon.
Pass out a summary of it.
Yeah.
Where's the hot seat, Mr. Chairman?
Hot seats wherever he sits down at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I appreciate this opportunity to bring this before you. I bring House Bill 301. This is roofing contractors licensing bill. What this does is this sets out.
Turn that microphone on for you. Is it on?
I believe it is. There's a red light's on it.
Okay.
But what this does, sets out the framework for licensing roofers and requiring them to be licensed. There'll be a biennial 2-year license. Every 2 years they have to renew it. And this provides exceptions to being licensed. Homeowners don't have to be licensed to work on their own roof. Maintenance workers at a business, if they're employed with someone, they can work at a business. Farm and ranch employees that are working on farm and ranch business or buildings, they don't have to be licensed. Regular full-time employees of a business, Georgia Department of Transportation employees who do roofing don't have to be licensed, and municipal and utility employees at their employer's facility don't need to be licensed. I could go through the bill, but I think the committee is very deliberative, and I appreciate that, and I don't want to waste your time. I know you have obligations or opportunities this evening, I guess I should say, to do. And Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, if there are no questions, I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Are there questions for the author?
I have one. I'll talk loud enough, I think. Right now, in my small Dade County, one of the counties I represent, there is no functional building codes, application codes. And to my knowledge, there's no other code enforcement officers we have. How would they be just exempt, or no one's watching them, so they're okay, or?
They'd still have to get the license, but Dade County wouldn't be enforcing any provision of...
Why would they have to get the license?
Because it's a state law and it covers the state. They still have to be licensed, and as long as they're licensed, I mean, they could go out there and, conduct business as they always have, but they'd be at their own peril.
And a typical license cost?
$200 for 2 years. $100 a year if you look at it that way.
Representative Stevens?
Mr. Weldon, Representative Weldon. Well, this will eliminate those. I know in my case, of firsthand knowledge that after a severe storm, severe hailstorm, and we had these guys going around the community saying that they, get the insurance company to come out, and the insurance company said, yeah, you have to have that. And you file a claim, and we signed a check over to them, and they do. Well, let's eliminate that kind of.
That's precisely part of what this bill is designed to address. Those folks who are just they got a truck and therefore they're a roofer kind of approach to this kind of work. This is designed to make those guys either go and get a license if they by the state and come in and do business, and then they also have to maintain liability insurance and workers' comp insurance, and that's a big barrier to those kind of guys that are doing that. We've had this is the #1 complaint at the Better Business Bureau, #2 complaint at the insurance, the Fire and Insurance Commission, and that's what this is aimed at addressing. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, Tom.
Just follow up on Representative Stevens, and I'm sorry, I just came from a committee meeting where I think we're all kind of doing that tonight. But did you relate what happened in Ringo last year? with that. And I think that's part of what may be driving this. But the tornado and in 1998 we had the same thing happen. My community was devastated by a tornado and dealt with the same issues. It's been a long time. But can you kind of relate some of that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate you bringing that up. We had, had 2 years ago, April 27th, 2011, we had a tornado go through Ringgold. And if it's not ground zero, you'll have all kind of debris and wind blowing shingles off of roofs. We had this elderly couple that they had some of these storm chasers come through. And this is the other big part of what the bill's trying to address, Representative Stevens, is those folks that chase the storms, and they go in and they prey upon people. When we didn't have electricity, the city of Ringgold was shut down. The sheriff wouldn't let anybody in or out, trying to keep all the looters out. But we had people that lived in the city of Ringgold that had water cascading through their homes, and these people came in and they said, they went and got a little slip from the sheriff, said, yeah, we'll let you in. They came in, they went in and put a couple of tarps over the house. Then they sent these folks a bill for $19,000 for putting 3 tarps on a very small house.
And I just want to relate, that's my experience. April 12th, 1998, we had a devastating tornado come through Dunwoody. They weren't sure if it was defined as a tornado because it happened at night, and one, it didn't take out any mobile homes, so it didn't met the true definition, but that's probably non-PC. But we had the same sort of, we probably had the same sort of issues. We had people coming up in overalls looking like utility contractors saying, we're here to shut off your gas. But we need to be paid in advance to shut off your gas. Well, Atlanta Gas Light doesn't do that. Georgia Power doesn't do that. And again, there's some of these folks are just preying upon people in areas that have been devastated, and people just don't know what to do at that point, and not knowing who they're dealing with.
That's exactly right, and that's the other big part of what this is. What's brought about me carrying this legislation. You're exactly right, and I appreciate that. We want to be able to have a mechanism to make those contractors who are preying on innocent victims, who are just trying to figure out how to stop the water running through the house, and have a way we could enjoin them from conducting business. That's right.
Other place. I apologize for being late, but Representative Von Epps, you have a question, sir?
Could you talk a little bit about enforcement, who will enforce this, and the consequences of the penalty for failure to comply?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you'll turn back to page 11, and it's actually beginning on page 10, section 8, if a person violates this code section and it's necessary for an investigator, it's not necessary for an investigator to come out and see that they actually applied the work to the property, they can prove it by other necessary means. They can have the homeowner testify, they can have neighbors testify, and if they show, or if the person advertises that they are a roofer, then there can be a cease and desist order that can be filed. If you look on lines 353 through 356, and then that's subsection C of section 8, and then they can also go down, and if they violate the cease and desist order that's issued by the board, the roofing board, then they'll be charged a fee not to exceed $500 for each violation thereof. And if they continue to do that, they can keep fining them. They keep working, and they'll be able to revoke their license also. And then they could seek an injunction. Yes, sir. That's right. Or the roofing board, but they work under the Secretary of State. The local building inspector will call the Secretary of State's office. And local folks have the ability to put a stop work order also.
time. We don't have a sign-up sheet. Let me ask anybody like to speak against the bill. Chuck, y'all got something you'd like to share with us? Come on up. This is from the Secretary of State's office. Yes, sir. You can go wherever you like.
We just want to reiterate our concerns that we shared in subcommittee. We're sympathetic to the roofers and their situation. Obviously, to the citizens that have been mistreated and abused by unscrupulous roofers. One thing I would like to ask is if the funding contingency is still in the bill. And secondly, again, just to reiterate our concerns about knowing how many there's going to be, how to adequately provide for the licensing provision, and also for the enforcement that puts the teeth in the bill and actually make it work. So without that knowledge, we're very concerned we can't do the job that needs to be done, and that, as I said earlier, it would give potentially a false sense of security to consumers that there may be a protection level there that does not exist because we cannot afford to hire the investigators to take care of businesses that should be taken care of.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Harper. Okay, the Section 10 is still in the bill. The act becomes effective only when funds specifically appropriated for this purpose. And the act in the appropriations make a special reference to this roofing contractor bill. But I know there were all kind of heartburn and issues over the many years we fought try to get the contractor's licensing bill in. Do you perceive the same type of problems in getting this thing after we've gone through that exercise and getting this one in? And I know somebody mentioned we got like 1,500 roofers or so in the state, and I got probably emails from half of them today. Most of the committee members probably did too. But since we've already had this exercise with the contractors, do we think it'd be a little easier in trying to figure out where we need to go with this license proposal?
I think it'll be easier, and I think once we know exactly what we're dealing with, but again, let's money put in.
Right.
We have some idea of what that level of funding is.
Would you guys, and that's a question I have, would your office have to sort of come up with some estimates on funding, you think, for what it would take for this to be properly implemented at some point in time? Or
Absent OPP, this would probably fall on us to try to.
okay.
How many contractors went through the process?
I don't know. Don't know how many we have. I'm not sure. I can find out.
Wasn't the real problem with the contractors that we set an end date for those who were going to be grandfathered in, and then we kept moving that end date.
That was one of the issues, yeah. Sure it was.
I would think, I would think that this would be less imposing on the contractors, but to what extent. And we're fine to do it, and again, sympathetic to the situation and understand it, but we don't have the warm bodies there to make it work. It just won't take right.
Let me ask you another question. If this gets passed, whose responsibility is it to go to get the either OPP and try to get an estimate of what it's going to take to fund this? Would that be the legislator's responsibility here, or I have no idea how that would be?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. The budget processes, which we submit an OPP, put it down, they seem to know best what we need. So,
I caught that, Chuck. Yeah. All right. Well, but the funding mechanism is in here, and I anticipate that staying. If it doesn't stay in, it comes back, then I would anticipate us not taking action if it got changed somewhere else. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Harrell.
I've got just a couple of questions clarifying that. The act becomes effective on when specific appropriation funded in this act. So is that through the normal annual budget process? Is there any other way for a specific appropriation other than that budget document? That's
budget. That's right.
So if that budget is, the effective date then would be when the governor signs that particular term's budget that includes this appropriation. Is that your understanding?
The effective date of when, you mean, it would only become active upon funding?
Yes, sir.
Then in that context, I think you're right.
And then from that date that the governor signs the budget with this specific funding in it, then do we go 1 year from that date before these other licenses are required? And I'm getting nods behind you, Representative Weldon.
Well, let me just refer to the.
What page is that on?
Well, the funding, of course, is section,
Right, section 10.
but then in several places, for example, section 7, beginning on line 216, which is on page 7, on or 1 year after this code becomes effective. So,
Yeah,
my
like
question
on
is,
line
this code
216.
is effective 1 year after that specific line item of funding is approved.
Right.
Is how I'm reading it. So there is some built-in time both for the industry to prepare to be licensed and the department to get a better feel for how many licenses and how that might take place.
Sure. Sure, there's time built in here for that. Exactly.
That's what I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to entertain a motion, but at the appropriate time.
Okay. Anybody else feel speak against the bill? I guess we got a lot of people here to speak for the bill. Got a show of hands, people that are for it.
Go for the motion.
All right. Let's we'll recognize you, Representative Taylor, for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move.
Do pass.
Second.
Got a move and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, let me know by raising your hand. I got to count. Okay. Any opposed, like sign. Okay, one against. So whatever's for and one against. All right, Representative, it's 5:15. I don't know what you can do about rules, but I'd say hurry.
Can we get that reported out today, Mr. Chairman?
We'll sign it in just a minute, as soon as I get it here. I'll sign it and throw it on down. But I think they've already closed. I don't know. You may have to deal with it first thing in the morning.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. All right, 5:17.
Yep.
There you are, right here behind me. Okay.
Snuck up on you.
Where did he go? Am I blind? I tell you what, I'm having more fun than the law would allow today.
Take a deep breath. Maybe take 2 or 3.
Maybe take 2 or 3, that's right. All right, Representative Williams, we have a substitute. Do you have another substitute to our substitute, or are we going with the originals?
One substitute.
We got the original substitute.
LC 362340S.
Okay.
We on the same page?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here to present this afternoon, substitute to House Bill 517. Just a little bit of background. Currently, in state code, as it relates to distances from schools and college campuses, the current rule is for beer and wine for carryout, 100 yards from schools and college campuses. For hard liquor for on-site consumption, as I understand it, 200 yards. But as I understand it, currently local governments can reduce that 200-yard number on their own accord, but they cannot reduce the 100-yard rule. What HB 517 would do, the substitute would allow local governments to reduce the 100-yard rule for college campuses only for the sale of beer and wine for carryout. The reason I'm before you with this is it came about in the city of Athens, Clarke County, which is in my district, home of University of Georgia, the state's flagship. There are at least 2, possibly more, grocery store projects that are looking at putting in-town grocery stores in Athens, Clarke County. And those are sorely needed. Athens, Clarke County has one of the highest poverty rates in the country, by far the highest poverty rate in Georgia. We have a lot of residents that do live below the poverty line, that live in public housing, that don't have transportation. So the issue of getting in-town grocery stores for Athens-Clarke County has been a hot topic for a while. Same thing to some extent with in-town pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens. But what we have been told by the economic developers working on these projects is there's a common theme, and that is that they need the ability to sell beer and wine package sales to make their economic models work. This started out something we were looking at just for Athens-Clarke County, but we quickly determined that it could not or should not be addressed as local legislation. That's the reason it is in front of you as a statewide bill. Since it would apply to obviously public colleges as well as private colleges, the University System of Georgia, the Chancellor's Office, has been aware of this bill since its inception. They're obviously taking no position or are neutral, but again are very aware. The Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, and I know Clint Mueller is here today, as I understand it, stands in support of the committee substitute. The Department of Revenue is aware, but again obviously have taken no position. The Athens-Clarke County Unified Government, as it relates to that particular entity, will be voting tomorrow evening on a support resolution, but as of today I cannot tell you that they have taken an official stand, but individual members seems to be a quorum there. The same thing with Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. We did look during the process, since the bill as written cites basically in the title grocery stores, but really it addresses any licensed entity. We looked early on at some restrictive language that would restrict it to grocery stores only, and after consultation with legal counsel felt like that if we were going to make this a local control issue, allowing local governments to set the distance, that it was also prudent to allow local governments to decide what type of establishments, if you will, that might sell beer and wine, that they would apply that reduced distance to. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that is my synopsis of the bill, and I will entertain questions.
So this basically allows local governments to, I'm not sure my choice of words, supersede or modify the language from the state law that says, we can approve these. I live in a very densely packed community. My district is 12 square miles, and so the distance requirements sometimes are very interesting. Just would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Again, applies to college campuses only. Currently, the law for packaged beer and wine sales is 100 yards. Local governments can elect to increase that distance currently, but they do not have the latitude to reduce it. This would give local governments the latitude to reduce that number to something less than 100 yards for beer and wine package sales.
And just to follow up, would these be accredited universities? I mean, I've got I've got one in my district that is basically in an office building that's a non-accredited university. Just a question.
College campuses are currently spelled out in existing code. We make no changes to what is described or is not described as a college campus. We use the same wording that we currently have.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Representative.
Why would local governments want to reduce it? I think in my case, it's them. They wouldn't reduce it.
Great question, Representative. What we're running into in Athens, if any of you are familiar with Athens, basically Broad Street is sort of the main drag of Athens. You've got UGA on one side. You've got Athens downtown on the other side. And we're looking again at least a couple of grocery store locations in the central business district of Athens that currently would not be able to locate there because they would be less than 100 yards from part of the UGA campus. And it's interesting, given the differentiation between beer and wine package sales and hard liquor sales, you actually, if you left the UGA arch to walk to one of these grocery store locations, it would currently be prohibited. You walk by several bars where hard liquor is being served, but at this point you could not have a grocery store further out than those bars are selling beer and wine package.
That was a question I was thinking here about grandfathered. If you get a good store that wants to go in there and pick up a couple of these bars, they're already licensed. Wouldn't that fall under the grandfather, and they can go ahead and do what they want to do?
That is not my area of expertise. I would defer to council or someone with more expertise. than
Might be a
I
little,
have.
what do you call that, urban renewal there or something?
Possibly so.
But I was thinking I ran into that with the situation back home. We redid our square, and with Kennesaw College moved in, and there was a situation where across the street, a square size of this room probably, Jim's shaking his head, he knows about that up there. They wanted to put a little bar in, a restaurant in that sold beer and wine. They run into a situation. And I don't know if they ever got in up there or not, but
So this is not my area of expertise. As a sophomore member of the House of Representatives, I had no intention of introducing anything alcohol related. I view this as a grocery store and economic development bill, Mr. Chairman.
well, our attention sometimes go askew. Okay, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm familiar with Georgia UGA. On line 15, it says, on line 14, it says, of any church building or within 200 yards of any school building, educational building, school ground, are we, and you mentioned it only pertains to college campuses, so is there a conflict in any school building versus all college campuses?
No, ma'am, I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that. The lines you're referring to is existing code. If you start on line 21, the portion that is underlined basically is what the changes are that would allow this flexibility. And if you notice, starting on line 21, it addresses retail sale of only wine and malt beverages for consumption off the premises. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Representative O'Neill.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can get some clarification on, for the reason that the on-premise licenses are permitted and the off-premises are not permitted. He mentioned something about a couple of bars that were there. What are their prohibitions as far as yards from?
I have no idea, and I don't know if our legal counsel has anything. Would that be
I think
about?
Department of Revenue is here also,
Oh,
if you want to call on them.
Yeah, would that be something that had been grandfathered in before the cap was spread that far, you think? Howard, could you help us out with that question about bars and...
I will try to help you out, but I can't really give you a definitive answer because that predated me as far as I know. And I don't know why they gave those local jurisdictions authorization to do consumption on premise sales within 100 yards, but didn't do the package sales within 100 yards. My assumption is that they would be checking IDs at the consumption on premise where if you buy a six-pack to go, you might be taking it back to your dorm room when you're within the college and school system. So that's about the best I can do because I don't have any definitive answer on that.
Okay. We got a couple other people to speak, I think, for and against the bill here. And Mr. Daniels, you're here. Y'all have no position one way or the other. And we got two other reps here that are y'all want to speak for or against the bill.
Only if necessary, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
We're for it. We're on it.
Be available to answer any questions about the history of Athens if anybody's curious.
You know anything about the history of the bars? That's all right. You don't have to answer that. There's a statute of limitation run, you said? Yes, sir.
I appreciate y'all entertaining this. I think that Commissioner Williams, Representative Williams definitely hit a point that's near and dear to my heart, where the district of the 118th has some of the highest poverty census tracts in the city of Athens, and Athens has the highest poverty rate in the state of Georgia. And so this is extremely important that we can get food opportunities, nutritional opportunities, in what's defined as a food desert. It's going to be located near a multimodal transportation system within the city that's right on the edge of downtown. And I think it'd be a great opportunity to serve an underserved part of our community. On top of that, there exists about 800 students that live downtown in the area already. We're building 1,200 more bedrooms in the next year. So we're going to have population density that will support these developments. And like Representative Williams said, there's two different developments on each side of downtown that will be affected by this, to about the tune of $80 million is one investment and $60 million is the other investment. And so this will go along into the economic development and helping the underserved in our community. I appreciate you listening.
These developments, I take it they're going to be anchored by some large food stores. Is that what you're looking at?
The issue that's been conveyed to us is the idea that they can't necessarily start the developments until they have the leases to show the bank to move the development forward. And so they're trying to get these leases, but no groceries will come in without the ability for package sales.
Okay, and that's what we're trying to address in this situation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions for the representative? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Speak for and against the bill. Jim, you got something you want to share with us? We don't have a sign-up sheet, so you're just going to have to raise your hand and wave it.
Jim Tudor, Convenience Store Association. Thank you. I think it's we support what Representative Williams is doing, and we also encourage the committee. I know there was some thought of trying to put square footage in there, but as we discussed prior to coming in the meeting, it is within the purview, and as the mayor knows, that should a community when looking at going with a shorter distance, they can determine locally who they would allow to go there. So that authority is already there without trying to write something where you're picking winners and losers at the state level. So we support it as. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ed, you have Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the advantages, I guess, being one of the older guys in the room is I do know why that was adopted. It happened in the city of Atlanta when Underground Atlanta first came into being, and the city came to the state and subsequently adopted a policy. There were some churches and schools and everything else right on top of the Underground Atlanta. So they had to make some tolerance for that, and it just wasn't looked at as a problem to do that for package sales. As I told you, Mr. Chairman, and other members of the committee, we initially looked at this legislation today for the first time. I know it was introduced, I guess, in the Hopper on Friday. And we feel like there's some problems. And the reason I say that is I've seen time and time again, and a lot of the legislation y'all seen come before you this year, it's because somebody back before said, we just want this little thing and we want that little thing, and it starts compounding, and the next thing you've got a whole different system than you started off with. So I caution you to go into a situation where you make another exception to the standard. Georgia has a good state standard. When we started deviating from that state standard, i.e. wine shipping is a good example, we let the cat out of the bag, and that's gotten to be a lot bigger problem now than it was before. And I could go ahead and enumerate a whole lot of issues I want in deference of time, but there's been a lot of examples of things changing, not for the betterment of the people of Georgia, but things changed because one little allowance was made and they got more compounded. Yes, we think the state standard is best because, again, of a lot of reasons. Again, if you'd like, I can give you some examples, but I know you all want to go home. We also think that the subject that Mr. Tudor mentioned, yes, we think there ought to be some kind of square footage requirement because a little hole in the wall store doesn't have that much investment. They don't have that much concern about their community as somebody that has a $500,000 or $1 million or $5 million investment. And we think if you had, we talked about with Representative Williams, 10,000, we said, okay, 8,000, some kind of standard that you said, let's have a square footage requirement in order to inject some state standard in that local governing authority. And make sure that, and the convenience store folks might say, well, it's unfair. Well, we're the liquor stores, and we represent more than 500 of them in the state. It's unfair to us, too. We can't go there either. So we're already out of the picture. but is it fair to the parents of the students that spend $30,000 in their school to put beer right under their nose? It's a question that you need to answer for yourself. But I think there ought to be some standard. Now, with that one little standard of 8,000 square foot, we agreed with Representative Williams to back off the bill. Otherwise, we have no other choice than to oppose the bill. And it's kind of just that simple. And we want to continue to try to work to reach some compromise. But right now, we just think it's blatantly unfair. And I'll yield for any questions, or otherwise say that's it.
And your feeling is basically because it's allowing the retail package of wine or malt beverages and not the distilled spirits, it's going to be an unfair advantage.
There, but don't get me wrong, Mr. Chairman, we don't want to go there. We don't want to put distilled spirits right on the nose of college students.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty much there already in the bars and the restaurants and everything that are within walking distance of the campus anyway. It's just that there's no stores there to sell it for take home. I guess that's the biggest difference. I mean, that's a general statement, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make one quick statement.
Yes, sir.
I think, we do look at changing times. I mean, my district has the same number of people, roughly 55,000 folks, as all of us do here. But my district is down to 12 square miles now. And I represent what used to be a big suburb, Dunwoody. We are a transit-oriented community now. I have 4 MARTA stations in my district. I've got 285, Ashford, Dunwoody, and all that. And as you see the transit-oriented development coming in, you're seeing, I've got a mini Walmart going into my district, which is not the mega store, but the mini store. And you're seeing a lot more of this. And I just want to say that, a lot more people, you're having a lot more pedestrian traffic and things like this. So the distances that you talk about, 100 yards or something like that, this is their community now. You might live on the 5th floor or 10th floor of a building that's next to a MARTA station, but your retail establishment might be right down on the ground level. Just want to throw that out.
I think what I'm concerned about is that are we going to allow the local jurisdiction to set certain standards as far as where these places of business are located? For instance, Mr. Bennett,
I don't think we're locking them down. We're saying it's going to be allowed, but the local, on line 24, where so permitted by resolution or ordinance of the county or municipality, I think we're just giving them an allowance, Representative. We're not saying that you've got to do this, but if you are willing to do it, is that right, Representative Williams?
Correct, Chair.
We're just...
They can set it as far away as they want.
Yeah, they can set it as far away as they want to. I mean, down in Savannah, we're not telling you guys that y'all got to do anything, or where Representative Harrell was in what, Snellville or wherever. I mean, this is not mandating anything. It's just saying if you've got a business wanting to come into your area and you want to make an exception or allowance for it, we're going to allow, the state's going to allow you to do it. That's my understanding, sir. Yes, sir, Representative Von Epps.
Just wanted to ask the author and the co-author the question about the proposition for the retail establishment. What are the proposed retail establishments? Are they grocery stores? Are they CVS pharmacies? What are they?
In Athens-Clarke County, again, there are at least 2, maybe more, economic development projects that are in discussion that are grocery stores. There has been some discussion among some of the developers of these that they're also having discussions with some of the major drug chains, CVS, Walgreens, that have what they call a university concept store for college towns. But again, what has driven us to this point is the opportunity for at least one, maybe more, in-town grocery stores.
And second follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, and what's the prohibition against some square footage on the, was there? Yep.
I think there was discussion about trying to put a square footage out there, but we decided that probably wouldn't be, because as Jim Tudor mentioned, if you put 8,000 square foot, what if you got a 6,000 square foot guy want to come in? of 7-Eleven or something like that. If you put it 10,000 square foot, there's some issues with square footage. I know that's what Stoney and Ed talked about, trying to find some way of doing that, but we haven't hit on a good compromise there. We felt like the square footage would probably be a detriment right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Because we're still leaving it to local control down there.
My point exactly, my thoughts are, we're going to entrust local governments to set that distance requirement. I believe that it's also appropriate for us to trust local governments to decide that they want to put in a square footage limitation or a product mix limitation as far as food versus alcohol or whatever criteria they would like to see approved.
One follow-up question: what's the actual needed yardage distance that you need for the opposition that's on the table?
Representative, I don't know the exact number. I know that for at least one we're looking at, and I think two of them, that 100 yards does not work for them, and I do not know the exact distance that it would take to make it work.
We may have an answer back to that.
4 lanes of traffic.
4 lanes on one and 2 lanes on
Across the street.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any further questions this time? Yes, ma'am. Marty.
I'm Marcia Blumenthal from the Georgia Municipal Association. We do support this legislation. We think it does provide local control for liquor issues and is important to every economic development.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Yes, sir, Clint.
As the author of the bill's already said, we support it too. ACCG.
Okay, thank you, Clint.
With that, if I can make a motion, sir?
Yes, sir.
I think this bill is a good bill. It leaves the local control to, it establishes some parameters, but it leaves the decisions back to the local government on what's best for them. What's best in some rural communities might not be best in an urban community, but this time I'd like to move due pass.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, let me raise your hand.
I'm sorry.